Donald Trump dropped a bit of a bombshell today in a confusing way. He says that by Thursday, Friday, or for sure by Monday, we're going to get huge news. He says it may not be trade related. And I think that's where the confusion comes in. He says nothing is higher than this news. Okay. He said this right after he was talking about China wanting to negotiate with the US, and that we're not negotiating as of now, but Trump will choose a time to start, right? A lot of people speculated for about 5 minutes that this was about pausing tariffs on China. And I think it is. According to new data today, imports from China are collapsing. Quote, "This is like nothing we have seen since summer of 2020. Unless Trump is completely disconnected from the severe amounts of inflation we are about to see, he's going to pause the tariffs on China this week." That is essentially the news that we got today. Okay. Again, in a very confusing way, even Scott Bessent, which I'll share the clip, statements from Bessent today. He says that like strategic chaos is a part of their strategy. You also have Paul Tudor Jones that says even if tariffs on China fall to 50%, you're still going to enter into a bear market and hit new lows for the S&P. I will share all of this with you throughout this video, but first, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already, if you like money, if you like markets, and want to stay informed of what's going on every single day. So let's get into what Trump had to say today. We also had a speech from Scott Bessent. Okay, so Donald Trump says that China's economy is suffering from a lack of US trade. He says that Chinese ships are turning back in the Pacific Ocean. He says that China wants to negotiate and we will meet at the right time. Donald Trump says by not trading with China, we're losing nothing. This is the first head scratcher where you kind of try to get in the head of Trump and say, is he off his rocker here? Okay, we're losing nothing. It could almost give you a headache reading it. The fact of the matter is, without China just abruptly ending trading with China, you will have hyper inflation because there will be a deficit. Trump should understand this, a deficit of the amount of goods that are in stores. When you have less goods, equal demand, what happens to pricing? It goes up, okay? It will skyrocket. So when you try to psychoanalyze Trump here, that doesn't sound good. Trump says that China wants to meet with the US. Trump says that China is doing no business right now, which, look at this. Trump's trade tariffs slump widens to nearly all US ports, supply chain data shows. It says an export slide that began in early 2025 has reached most ports across the US and nearly all export market products as the trade impact of President Donald Trump's tariffs worsen, with agriculture the hardest hit. As businesses cancel orders from China, US imports continue to plummet, with a 43% week-over-week drop in containers through April 28th. Quote, "We haven't seen anything like this since the disruptions of summer 2020, said Kyle Henderson, CEO of trade tracker Vizion." Dude, this is a ticking time bomb, okay? Literally a ticking time bomb for the economy. The port of LA, just on a week-over-week basis, traffic is down 17.3%. That's where is getting most of the products from China. Okay? Pretty much all of the products from China. That is bad. In the following weeks, you're going to see that get even worse. Even if, let's say 2 weeks from now, Trump decides to pause the tariffs on China and companies start immediately ordering from China again. Sorry. Shelves are going to run dry for a period. That's a problem. You know, and let me just say this. Like, I think Trump has good intentions. I think, you know, as convoluted as they are, the process, he has good intentions. He's trying to do what's right for America. All of that. The way he's doing it, I can't tell if he is ignorant, just really doesn't know the damage he's causing or could cause in the coming weeks, or if he just like has way too much pride in America. He doesn't understand, like, there's certain things that like we can't get around, right? You can't just cut off China and expect things to be fine abruptly overnight. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Now, right after these comments about China, Trump says there's a really positive announcement Thursday, Friday, or Monday before we leave for the trip for the Middle East. He says the announcement to be as big as it gets. But then he says the announcement over the next few weeks is not necessarily on trade. So after that, you know, we had a few minutes there where people were like, okay, this could be a China deal. This could be a pause on China tariffs. And then Trump said this, and all hope basically went away. But remember, art of the deal, create chaos and uncertainty and unpredictability, and that's kind of what happened today. Trump says U.S. deficit with China is turning due to tariffs. And then Donald Trump says we don't have to sign trade deals at all. And then Trump says on trade deals, we're not chaotic, we're flexible. Trump also had a meeting with Canada's Prime Minister that was live streamed today. Carney, Canada's Prime Minister, said Canada will never become the 51st state. Trump responded and said, I say never say never. Trump says that India has agreed to drop tariffs to nothing. Donald Trump then says, in some cases, we'll sign some trade deals. Trump says, we'll put down some numbers. The country is open for business. Trump says they are going to pay for the privilege to shop in the United States of America. Trump says, think of the U.S. as a super luxury store, a store that has the goods. Trump says that nations, again, don't have to sign the deals, that will basically just put the tariffs numbers on them regardless. Trump says that to stop asking how many deals we're signing. And Trump on trade deals says we're not looking to hurt countries. And he says we won't do much business from Canada. Trump does reaffirm that USMCA is a good deal for everybody, but there was a lot of talks today about potentially renegotiating this USMCA trade deal. Like Canada's Prime Minister Carney, that says some things about USMCA will have to change. Trump says that investments are hitting economic data right now. Trump says that no, Carney couldn't say anything to change the tariffs. Trump, referring to Canada, says this is a very friendly conversation. He says that we protect Canada militarily, and we always will. Donald Trump also says today that the Houthis don't want to fight. We will stop bombing the Houthis effective immediately. Trump said on Canada, we don't need their cars, we don't need their energy, we don't need their lumber, we don't need anything they have other than their friendship, which hopefully we will always maintain. Trump says, why is America subsidizing Canada by $200 billion a year in addition to giving them free military protection and many other things? But again, we're not like subsidizing them $200 billion. That's the, again, trade deficit. Scott Bessent had a lengthy interview today, and he said that we are looking at changes in material for the nickel coin, but he believes the dime is profitable. And in some bad news for EV names, Tesla, really car companies in general, the U.S. House likely to kill the EV tax credit, Speaker Johnson says. Bessent says it's hard to know when the market would rebel against U.S. debt, which is, I would argue, has already started. Bessent says we are trying to control absolute level of debt and grow GDP. Agrees with Yellen that debt to GDP ratio is what matters. Bessent says U.S. debt trajectory is unsustainable. And Bessent says he would not be in favor of the Fed issuing a digital currency. Bessent says the U.S. government will never default. We will raise the debt ceiling. And per Fortune, only 9% of CEOs expected a revenue decrease at the start of the year compared to where we are now at 44%. A U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent says strategic uncertainty is part of negotiations over tariffs. Now, again, think to what Trump said. There's going to be this huge announcement that's bigger than anything else. Like, it's not the Ukraine-Russia war ending. Like, it's not a deal with Canada and Mexico. Like, nobody cares about that at this point. The only thing that is, like, at the top of king of the hill is a trade deal with China. Like, that is what it has to be about. It has to be about a pause on China tariffs, right? Anything else would be seen as a massive disappointment. And then Scott Bessent says strategic uncertainty is part of negotiations over tariffs. I mean, come on now. Like, they're almost screaming, we're going to pause tariffs on China, but it's going to be chaotic as hell until we announce that. That's what I'm getting out of today. Treasury Secretary Bessent says that he expects Q1 GDP data to be revised upwards. He says that nothing in the data indicates that the US is in a recession. And he says perhaps as early as this week, we will be announcing trade deals with some of the US biggest trade partners. But again, unfortunately, like, all of that's priced in. None of it matters besides China in terms of what's going to move markets higher. Bessent said he can see substantial reductions in tariffs on U.S. goods. Bessent says that they are currently negotiating with 17 of 18 key trade partners, but have not engaged with China as of yet. Again, you got to pause the tariffs on China, I think, even before you reach out to China. This one's funny, okay? This one's going to make you laugh. U.S. Treasury Secretary Bessent says Trump's economic agenda is already bearing fruit. Okay there, buddy. Where? I don't see it. The balance of trade came in today for March at negative $140.5 billion. The estimate was $137 billion. So this is going to negatively impact GDP once again. Exports came pretty much in line with expectations, a little bit lower actually. We were expecting $280.5 billion. It came in at $278.5 billion, so about $2 billion shy of estimates. Imports came in at $419 billion versus the estimated $417.6 billion. So that's going to, again, kind of add to the negative pressure on the Q1 GDP report because that data was for March. The RCM TIPP Economic Optimism Index came in at 47.9. The estimate was 50.2. So, again, people don't feel very optimistic whatsoever. 10-year Treasury auction actually came in pretty good. And we do have some earnings today and after hours that will be important. Supermicro, AMD, Rivian, Tempest, Energy Transfer, Arista, Astra Labs, Upstart, Wynn, and Lucid. And then tomorrow morning, Uber, Walt Disney, Teva, Novo Nordisk, some others, Wednesday and after hours, AppLovin, Carvana, ARM, Axon, DoorDash, Dutch Bros. Thursday, Peloton, Shopify, ConocoPhillips, Kronos, Warner Bros, Crocs. Thursday and after hours, The Trade Desk, Coinbase, Mercado Libre, Cloudflare, DraftKings, Affirm, Wolfspeed. And then Friday, not really anything in particular that's, I don't even know any of these companies, to be honest, besides TerraWolf. That one could be interesting. The CNN Fear and Greed Index today coming in at 57. Market momentum, extreme fear. Stock price strength, extreme fear. So that actually got a little bit better. Stock price strength, extreme greed. Put and call options, extreme fear. Market volatility is neutral. Safe haven demand in extreme greed. And junk bond demand in extreme greed as well. Again, people are just very bearishly positioned. CNN's Fear and Greed Index really doesn't represent that. You can see put and call options, extreme fear. Like, you know, Wall Street is not bullish this market. Okay, retail is. Wall Street is not. Percent of stocks trading above their 50-day moving average at 47.69%. So you're back to kind of a normal range, not elevated by any means, but kind of in a normal range. Once you get above like 65%, then you start to get into kind of bull market like territory. And it will be fascinating to see what the AI investor sentiment survey looks like. Okay, it asks members one question: how do you feel the stock market will be in the next 6 months? And you're sitting at some of the most bearish levels you've seen throughout all of this trade war, crisis. Like, it's bad. Okay, 59.3% of investors are bearish. The high on April 2nd was 61.9%. So you're like right up there at the high. Even though markets have recovered quite a bit, bearish investors really just continue to climb and stay elevated. Neutral investors at 19.8%, bullish investors at 20.9%. We will get new numbers on this coming Thursday. Now, Paul Tudor Jones says today, legendary investor, one of the best that has ever lived, says the stock market will hit new lows even if Trump cuts China tariffs to 50%. He said this today on CNBC. Quote, "For me, it's pretty clear. You have Trump who's locked in on tariffs. You have the Fed who's locked in on not cutting rates. That's not good for the stock market," Jones said on CNBC's Squawk Box. Quote, "We'll probably go down to new lows, even when Trump dials back China to 50%. He also said, quote, "We'll dial it back to 50 or 40%, whatever. Even when he does that, it'll be the largest tax increase since the 60s, Jones said. Quote, "So you can take 2 to 3% off growth." He says, quote, "Unless they got really dovish and really cut, you're probably going to go to new lows. And then where new lows, the hard day will start to follow. And it'll probably create the Fed to move, create Trump to move, and then we'll get some kind of reality." Now, I personally think China tariffs are probably going to settle at maybe the 10% baseline, with individual sectors getting tariffed, right? Maybe the 20% fentanyl tariff will stay in force, plus a 10% additional, that's 30%. And then like pharma or semis or other areas will be tariffed. So I think it's going to be even lower than what Paul Tudor Jones says here. And I think that's a lot lower than Wall Street expects. And yes, it still will impact, the economy and all of that. Question is, have we priced that in? Are we okay with that? And the bigger question is, what happens to the labor market? Is the Fed able to cut rates? Do we have inflation in that kind of environment? There's so many other things that are kind of going on, not just tariffs, but what are the effects of tariffs? And based on where tariffs are, will kind of give you the effects. So there's a lot of uncertainty right now, but I do think we could have a bull case scenario coming out of all of this. And that's something Wall Street is really not even considering at this point from a large hedge fund institutional perspective. They're all super bearish right now. Retail is kind of bullish. They've been buying the dip, but big money? No, they are about as bearish as you've ever seen before. And that's what's so weird about this market right now is you really need to be prepared for anything to happen, okay? Anything is possible. We could have a depression, okay? We could have hyperinflation, which I think hyperinflation would lead to the depression. Let's be clear about that, which would lead to layoffs, which is just a really bad situation. If Trump just did not back down at all, there was no negotiations with China, no pause on tariffs, like he just said, F it, we're nuking the economy. Like that is a small possibility. The larger possibility is we get a pause on China tariffs, we negotiate a deal, and we go back to some sense of normal, okay? But again, how do you prepare your portfolio when you have such a dramatic range of outcomes? And I think that's what Wall Street is really struggling with as of right now. So let me know what you guys think about all of this down below in the comment section. Are you bullish? Are you bearish? Let me know your thoughts down below. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.